What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Azariah Podcast. I'm Pedro. This show is about real people and their stories, the kind that shake you up and change you. Today, we're talking with Jan, a Manitoba mom, author, and caregiver advocate whose son's diagnosis launched her into the world she never imagined. Jan, thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for inviting me today.
Yeah, awesome. So how's your day been so far?
It's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Enjoyed my morning coffee, ready to go on.
Yeah? Now you get all the energy to go?
Exactly.
Now we're ready to just completely dive in, eh?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's dive into your story. Tell me about your family before the diagnosis. What was life like?
Life was pretty sweet. My son that was born with a heart condition, he was my second child. So when he was born, just before that, we just had a 1.5-year-old daughter. Our son was born and we had a boy, we had a girl, both under 2. And we're really excited just to start life as a family of 4.
Walk me through the moment when everything changed. What happened during those 48 hours?
Our story had a definite intense turn. After coming home from the hospital, we enjoyed 10 days at home with our son, took walks. He was born a little bit early, so he was really tiny, and it was just exciting to show off the little bundle to everybody. But he had a bit of a murmur when he was born in his heart. So on day 10, we had this appointment set up for us to go and get it checked out at the Heart Center in Winnipeg. And at that appointment, it took really, really long. So, it's one of those things. You're a mom, you just had a baby. You're not super energetic yet. You're supposed to be sitting at home and relaxing and having people care for you. And suddenly I'm standing beside this bed with my little boy on it, and there's scans happening, and doctors are coming in, and they're talking about medical definitions and words that I've never heard in my life. And you know something has shifted. You kind of feel it as a mom. You know something's wrong, but you don't know what. And so that was an intense appointment because you're sitting in the space waiting to find out what's going on. After his echo, we waited in a room for a long time for the doctor to come in as she was reviewing the scans. And as we waited, all of a sudden there's a social worker that comes in, there's a nurse that comes in, everyone looks sad. And again, it's that feeling of, oh shoot, something is really wrong. What is it and what does this mean for us? So that diagnosis happened. We found out of his heart condition. They informed us we couldn't take him home. We were actually admitting him directly into hospital from that appointment. And we walked him through the tunnels across into the ICU and left him there and went home with our 1.5-year-old, who had, of course, come along to the appointment with us because she was little and we didn't think it was going to be what the appointment ended up being. Thought it would just be routine and come home. The next 24 hours, even less than that, it was less than 24 hours from the time he was diagnosed till I found myself on a medical plane on the way to Edmonton with him, and his surgery happened the next day. So within 48 hours of his diagnosis, he had had his first surgery in Edmonton, so 2 provinces away.
That's something that you don't expect
from
a new baby.
No, yeah,
Wow,
and it
crazy.
was, we attended a church, and there was a whole bunch of food set up to be delivered. So from the doctor's office, we had made phone calls to the people organizing that. It's like, pause food, we're leaving the province, our son is sick, we need to go and have surgery done for him. So we don't need the food right now. And it was just a whirlwind of calling people and connecting. And, at this stage, you're still kind of in the process of calling people to let them know you've had a baby. And people want to come and meet your kid. And now suddenly it was a complete opposite turn.
Okay. What's one thing from those first weeks that you look back on now and think, I can't believe I got through that?
I think simply the fact of being 10 days postpartum and walking back and forth from the hotel to the NICU every single day and sitting in a chair. And just the physical aspect of caring for your kid in an ICU and going back and forth is just very unusual activity for a mom. That was a huge piece. I think the hardest pieces within those first few days was even just what I had explained of that first day of where he was diagnosed and waiting for the plane and getting to Edmonton and getting settled, and just you don't know what's happening. I feel like it began to turn as we got more information and were able to know kind of what was going to be the next steps for us and for our son.
Okay. So what were the next steps? Like, just if you could walk me through that a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, he had his surgery. He would have been 11 days old at that point in time. And he was in the ICU for the next 2 weeks until they tried the next surgery that needed to be done, another procedure to get his heart to better function. That one took a bit of a turn. So we ended up being in the ICU for a long time. So it was just getting used to that day in, day out of going to the ICU and the rhythm that ends up becoming in a weird kind of way as well. You know, like things like I quit wearing jewelry, so there was less chance of me bringing in germs because he was in a fragile space. I had to start pumping milk and stuff like that, which is a shift in motherhood of what you were expecting, but kind of getting into the rhythm of that. Day one, that feels super strange. By a week, you're having conversations with other moms in the room because we all went to the same room to do it at that time. Some of those things have shifted in hospital systems, but at that time, that's what my experience was. And you begin to like have conversations and get to know other people, and it becomes to feel a bit normal because that's your normal rhythm. And that's a really unique shift of experience when you're in an ICU for a long period of time.
Okay. When did it stop feeling like you were drowning, and when did it start feeling like this is something that you could handle?
Yeah, and I think I've had a lot of conversations with other people in these sorts of situations, and this will vary for sure. Like an answer to this sort of question varies greatly from person to person. My personality type, I thrive on information, and information helps me track better. So for me, when things started to feel less overwhelming was one particular nurse we had in the ICU had done this for a long time. And her specialty was heart kids. She spent a lot of time taking care of babies. And I asked her questions and questions and questions. And she taught me about congenital heart defects and about different outcomes and different procedures and how that makes the function of my son's heart different. And I could ask anything and she gave me information, and for me that helps us build a bit of a security space of just understanding. It helped me learn how to better navigate. Even the hospital system gave me a better idea of questions I could ask doctors in navigating our next steps and different options of care or timing of surgeries and different things like that. So she was incredibly helpful in helping me find footing. And I would say in addition to this nurse would have also been an intensivist. And for those who have never been in an ICU, an intensivist is like the top overseer of the ICU. And they do like 3-day long shifts, and they're kind of keeping track of these highly complex medical kids to make sure that care is consistent and things aren't falling through the cracks, and they're highly educated. And one intensivist in rounds by my son's bedside one day had asked me, and Mom, how do you think your son is doing? And I was like, me? Like, I hardly know this kid. He's like maybe 15 days old at this point in time. I haven't held him in 5 days at this point because of surgeries and stuff. I don't know what he's feeling or what's going on with him. Like, I'm in a completely different world. And he had said, no, as a mom and as a parent, you have instinct that we as a medical family do not have.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And he's like, your voice is important for us to hear in this. And so those two pieces, the nurse that gave me the medical information on congenital heart defects and the intensivist who said, you as a parent have instinct and voice that is necessary for advocating for your son's health and care, were two integral pieces for giving me a better understanding of where I needed to go and made me feel less overwhelmed and less like I was drowning.
Okay. Wow. That's wild. You talked about dealing with postpartum depression while your son was going through all of this. How did those things crash into each other?
I think having the space in a different place, like for us, we weren't around home. There was more time for me to sit in that and process and think. I was thankful for the fact that it was my second child. So I understood what was normal and what wasn't normal and could reach out for helps and supports in the midst of that. It did make me really concerned and aware of other moms around me as well, realizing that some mothers end up in an ICU with their child on their first child, where they don't have anything else to compare that experience to, even to know what they need for their own health and what resources they may need to reach out to. So it gave me a space where I had more compassion and empathy for those around me as well as I navigated that. And I was thankful that I could reach out to people because I knew what was normal, what wasn't normal, and be able to ask other moms how they were doing in the midst of that as well.
What's something that people don't understand about what it's really like inside a pediatric cardiac unit?
I think one of the most surprising things to me, and probably the longest lasting residual effect of that season and of our life, is noise and light. And so we don't realize as we go for day to day how much the fact that we have a sun that rises and a moon that comes as well, a sun that rises and sets, that gives us, our bodies, the ability to rest and to know when it's time to sleep and to come back into life. That is something that helps actually our body function properly, including our mind and just helping us in our mental health. When you're in an ICU, there's a room filled with, and again, some of these things have changed. When we went there, all the kids were in a big room together, and there was lights and there was sounds and there was beeps constantly. So there was no escape from noise. It made it very hard to know what time of day it was because it all looked the same. It all felt the same. There's no window to see what the sun was doing outside. That it just made it feel like an extra long, never-ending day. Which is hard to kind of keep your spirits up in the midst of, and became one of the most challenging things. And to this day, a beep that I don't know where it's coming from and I cannot stop quickly brings me back into that space of being in the ICU and listening to constant beeps and chimes of medication pumps and heart monitors and all of those things that are constantly chiming. That causes anxiety and stress in a second. That was really, really challenging. As a mom, sitting there with my son, things that were challenging and hard in that space were, again, the cleanliness thing I said. If I was journaling and I dropped my pen, I picked it up and I sanitized it, and I sanitized my hands. And if I had to wipe my face, I sanitized my hands. And if I took a picture, then I sanitized my hands, and then I sanitized the camera, and trying to keep germs at bay. My oldest, who lived through that experience with us, is my most adept at keeping her hands clean and is aware of hand germs of all my children. And I think that's a big piece of outcome, actually, of our experience in the ICU, because you're just used to washing your hands constantly, which are weird pieces. It doesn't feel like a big deal, but you realize later how absurd and abnormal that is, and how most people go about life. That those pieces were just, there's a bit of a cold surreal, what's the word I'm looking for? The space in the ICU, it just feels very cold and sanitized at times. And when you're in there for a long period of time, it's hard to keep up your mental health and just your hope in the space of that. It can be challenging.
Is it challenging afterwards, so to say, adapt back to the real world?
I would say that it took us a little bit after we were back to adapt. I didn't let people hold my son very easily as well, and if people were sick, I didn't want them coming over, and anyone who came into our house, we actually asked them to wash their hands at the kitchen sink, which was near our front door, as soon as they came in. As part of that too, as we kind of adjusted back into normal life.
Okay.
So it's weird also, taking your kid home after you've watched their heart rate and their oxygen levels every second of the day for 6 weeks straight, because he was attached to monitors to monitor those things at all times. And then suddenly you have your child at home and there's nothing monitoring how fast their heart is going and how much oxygen they're getting when they're breathing. And that is a really absurd thing to adjust to when you've been in the ICU for a long time. You begin to get used to staring at their monitors to check all those stats, and suddenly they're gone, and you're supposed to have confidence they're okay. When the day before they had all these machines hooked up to them is a weird mental switch for parents to go through.
And I'm guessing you also become quite good at reading those stats if it's for a long time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, parents who are in there for a long time, you see them definitely growing quickly in their knowledge of all of those things and how to read them, and letting professionals who come by know when things have changed because they've been watching the monitors for so long.
There's usually a moment when the pain starts to turn into something else, maybe advocacy, writing, building a community. When did that start to happen to you?
I think it was a slow process. I'm a verbal processor, so I realized early on I needed a way to process what was going on. My husband is an internal processor, and so me just talking to my husband constantly to process all my thoughts would be overwhelming. So we actually started a blog at the time for me to be able to write every night of what was going on, and it was less for anyone who was reading it, and a lot of our family and friends who lived further away would read the blogs to find out what's going on. It was a good way to stay in contact with people without having to call everybody and give updates. But it wasn't actually for them. It was primarily just for myself for processing. So even in the space of writing, I found a space where I could get perspective and kind of ground myself in the midst of the tumultuous time that it was. So that would have been the first shift that happened in that turning things around.
Okay. That I almost feel like I would want to dive into that a little bit more, like what it's like when offloading your mind, writing. Like I like what Jordan Peterson, he pushes very hard. People should self-author always, like no matter where you are. That helps it helps you to grow as a human, but and also learn. Like as you just, I don't know what, I never look into what it all means, but I'm thinking right now, treating it as journaling. So like how do you think like exactly that it has helped you, like you just blogging about it?
Yeah, I think when we're living through intense stories, so much gets stuck in our head and in our body. And by writing it out, you actually have the physical release of just writing or typing or whatever format you're using for that. But you're also unloading kind of the thoughts in your mind. So it wasn't scripted. I didn't like try to follow a format every time I would blog. I just wrote. So it would contain factual things of what had happened in the day and what medications were given, which interestingly enough, now many, many years later, also gives me a bit of a diary of what happened. And when I've reread some of those in the last year or two, and there's like, wow, I forgot a lot of things that I didn't think I would ever be able to forget. Which is great because we should forget a lot of that stuff over time. But when there's sometimes you medically want to know certain medications that were given and there was your child's response to them, because that can be helpful for future things that happened as well. So it was actually nice to have a medical journal of what happened. But I also talked about how we were doing. And in the process of that, I could, it made me pause and take time to feel. Because one of the things of being someone who processes and navigates life through collecting information to help me get to where I want to go or to make it through that space is sometimes you get stuck in your head. So because this is a medical situation that we were in, my brain tends to attack it very scientifically. And I'm looking at, what are the medical responses of different treatments or surgeries, and what does that look like? And it's more like a medical student approach of learning. And in the pausing and the blogging and the journaling of my thoughts, it made me stop and go, how am I? Like, what am I actually feeling? As like, what's Mom Jen wanting to say right now? How has today been? What has been great? What has been horrible? And in the midst of that, I also don't want to scare everyone to death at home that it's really, really bad. So it also forces me to go, what are my hopes? What was good about today that I can leave a positive comment of experience of today as well. And in the process of that, it also reminds me that there's good things that have happened. And a lot of hospitals, especially children's hospitals, have programs that help parents in these things of processing as well. So, and I did take this option. I don't know why, but it's a great one is beads. And so they can give you a string, and the different beads stand for different procedures or tests or accomplishments that the child has gone through in their medical journey. And so you can see that there's progress, because one of the things of long-term health complication, and you feel stuck a lot of times, and it's hard to see where you've come and what has been done, and you just feel like you're still in the same place. Okay. So, in the blogging or in the processing of beads on a string, you're like, wow, things have happened. That happened, weeks ago, and this was my hope of what would change, and that has changed now. Now we have something new that we're hoping for, and it gives you steps of progress that you're working through that gives you a sense of movement, that you might not be stuck here forever, that you're walking through that hard forest of emotion and navigation.
Yeah, it reminds me of something Dr. John Deloney says in his book and even his podcast, about it's like picking up bricks in your backpack. I feel like the way you're explaining it's like you're constantly picking up bricks, adding into your backpack, you carry, but this sounds like a way of unloading them, like that you're not carrying the entire weight throughout the entire time.
Yeah. There's times in these spaces that you need to laugh as well, and that kind of sounds strange, but I remember one night in our hotel where we were staying across from the hospital, we watched a comedy show because we just needed to come out of our grief and our fears and our sadness and actually find balance. I saw on an Instagram reel following this person who talks a lot about grief, and she was like, we need micro joys in our macro grief. And when you're going through really hard times, you need to find little ways to find joy. You can't really completely break from it because, it's your life. It's a season of challenge that you're walking through. But the ability to look for small things to be joyful about and to smile about and to enjoy are so important for being able to give you the energy and perspective you need to get through and not to lose hope in the midst.
Your website says no wasted tears. Where does that come from?
No wasted tears comes from a heart that desires to see good things come out of no matter what comes in life. Tears will come, struggles will come, heartache will come. And I don't sit in a belief that God brings challenges in order for us to be able to show his glory. I think we live in the world where brokenness happens and hurt and pain happen. And God is a God of restoration and of bringing joy out of sorrow and bringing beauty out of ashes. And so it's my constant desire to bring whatever happens in my life, whatever tears may fall from the grief and the sadness of that, to God and say, what can I bring from this? Where can I perhaps meet someone who's gone through something similar and share hope? Because I've been through it, I've made it with my battle scars. It has shifted who I've become, and it's been a big piece of developing a whole different piece of me than probably would have happened otherwise. And it's not that it erases the challenge, but there's still to take what's happened in our life and to build that into something positive in our future. I think it's something that we all have the ability to carry. So no tear needs to be wasted, no grief needs to be wasted, no sadness needs to be wasted. That can be the fertilizer for something new and beautiful when we allow it to be. And I think in that too, there needs to be space where we allow ourselves time to heal. Like that doesn't come without its own sense of work. Right. That needs to happen to make that happen as well. There's no timeline for that. Sometimes it's a long season of grief or before we are able to turn that around into something different. But yeah, that's always been my heart desire, to not waste a tear, to find out what is its purpose, to either for myself or for someone else around me, that I can learn and grow from whatever life brings.
You recently started, well, initially you wrote a book, and you see the book we see the book behind her, and we're also going to add a link in the description of this podcast. I'm going to ask you for it probably, and if somebody wants to find the book or buy the book, so that will be available there. So when did that start turning into digital stories? And how did that happen?
Well, I'm going to back up just a little bit on how the book came to be.
Okay.
Because you had mentioned earlier about, I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but kind of where this all turned into something to like help other people. And it started with kind of blogging my thoughts to kind of turn things around for me. But the next step was actually the writing of the book before the digital stories came.
Okay.
And that came because I had a dear friend who had gone through compacted grief, lost 3 out of 4 parents within a very short amount of time.
Wow.
Both of his parents and his wife's father as well. And I went to go visit them just a day or two before the funeral of his father-in-law and talk to the family and, what we do. And as I was leaving, he followed me to my van to say, hey, just wanted to thank you again for what you were writing when your son was sick. Now, Pedro, this was like years after. We're talking maybe 5 years after his surgery. It's been a long time, and it just seemed like really odd timing for him to come and talk to me about what I blogged once upon a time 5 years ago when he was in his own grief. And as I drove home from that interaction, I realized he was looking for ways to process his own grief and remembering how I was processing, and that was a connecting point for him. And it made me realize there's people who go through these things who, I'm an extrovert and I will go and find my resources. I will hunt them down.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've been able to navigate and find good resources that have helped me. But there's some people who just are wired differently.
Yeah.
And it's a lot scarier to talk to even the medical people that are available in hospitals to help you navigate. People like child life specialists and social workers who can be tremendous supports to families who are going through this. But when you're already in a space of unknowing with your child, talking to all their doctors is overwhelming, never mind other strangers. And that makes, and in the midst of your very personal time of struggle as a family. So the book idea came out of that, of what if I write a book for parents who are going through a time of struggle with their kid, who might be needing to navigate this, but they're not able to reach out to the resources that are around them to know what's going on, that perhaps a book could help them. They don't have to talk face to face with the person. They can still get the information. Just little snippets to help bridge the gap so they talk to the people that they need. So I wrote the book with 30 short chapters, kind of created for parents who are not able to sit. You don't have a large amount of capacity in your brain to like process big amounts of information. So the chapters are all really short on purpose for that, so they can come and grab it. So the way that I've compared it is, you think of a marathon runner, and if you would run the whole marathon on a hot day and not drink any water, what would happen?
Collapse.
Exactly.
Or die, probably.
Right? And there's caregivers out there who are running a marathon with their child, and without support, without something to refresh, they will collapse. And if they do that, they don't get their kid to the finish line of where they need to go to. And so the book was created to be sips of water, those little water cups that marathon runners get, right? That is not a big feast. They're not sitting down for a 10-course meal. They're getting a splash of water to keep their system running so they can get to the end and have rest. And so this book resource was created as sips of water for caregivers who are on their journey with their kids to be able to get to where they need to get to. And so that was where the book came from. And that was like one of the biggest pieces, and I think a very foundational point of shift for me within even processing my own grief, with just where life took a pivot for us of what we had expected. And for my child, like it's as much as this is part of my story and I'm sitting here and talking with you, it's like one step away, my story. This is actually my child. This is their health that they're living with, that they will need to navigate, hopefully long past my life expectancy, right? And so I'm a secondary character in the story, but caregivers are incredibly important because when our children are young, we are the primary caregiver,
right? And
making sure that all these things are cared for our children.
The process after writing of a book, like, how did that feel? Like you went from blogging to writing a book.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about the process. I'm curious.
It felt different. And I don't even know why, because some of my blogs were way longer than the chapters of my book. But I think with blogging, I'm just kind of spewing my thoughts. And with writing the book, I was trying to sculpt it a little bit more and be more intentional of what I was saying and why I was saying it. So that puts a different pressure on it. So it was actually hard to sit down and write multiples. And I was also surprised that as I was writing the book, these are things I've talked about, they're things I've blogged about. And now suddenly writing a book, it hit different. Like I had to process some emotion again. Like it was like another layer of just healing for myself, of putting it into a bit of like a how-to help book in the space of that. So yeah, it was challenging. There was like mental roadblocks on like what to write, what needs to be included. I did a lot of walking through Kleefeld during that time. I found just in the process of walking, it helped me sort my thoughts and my ideas a little bit. And I'd get ideas on my walks to come back and write again and just kind of get my thoughts going. It was challenging. I did it mostly on my own. So I didn't work with a publisher. I self-published.
Okay.
I hired an editor for the editing piece. And my friend and I, we worked on the design for the cover and put it up on Amazon. So trying to keep it as affordable as possible so I could get it to as many people as possible for a low cost as well.
Okay. Well, I have to say it's a beautiful design, like self-authored, and the design is beautiful. I'm curious though, like how long did the process take roughly?
It happened in COVID. So when the world...
good timing.
Right? When the world shut down, I'm like, well, this is probably a good time for me to do this project because I'm otherwise quite busy in my schedule and there wasn't anywhere to go. So I sat and I wrote during that time. So probably from when I started writing the book until editing was close to a year. Probably it took like a year and a half until it was published from when I started writing. It's a good question. I don't know if I've ever actually docked the time, but I knew it was months and months and months. Because although it's not a long book, like you don't consider all the thought time in between chapters for authors. And I don't know how like story authors do it because they have so much more to like take into consideration. But even in this small book, it was lots of thinking in between of where I wanted things to go and what subjects to cover. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds similar from, creating a video from my end. Like I can relate a little bit. Recording a video or like even preparing this, whatever, like your time, what you want to do, recording the video, editing, it might take 5 hours. But how many hours did you spend thinking about it, just developing the idea in your head? So it sounds similar to that. I feel like sometimes it gets missed. People don't realize how much, just brain time that needs to create something like that. So, and how did that start turning into digital stories?
Yeah, so I wrote the book, and actually before the book was even published, again, because it was COVID, I was looking for things to do, and there was this online conference for heart parents that they could go to that I joined. And on there was someone who was doing a talk on digital storytelling. Her name was Pedro Wolf. And she was talking about how you can use digital stories to process the experiences that you've gone through. And because I was in the midst of writing my book, I hunted her down on Facebook and sent her a random message. I'm like, I'm listening to you right now at this conference, online conference. I'd love to connect with you because I'm writing this book and I think maybe we could collab. So we became friends. And like this is back in the early 2020s, right? Probably like 2021 or so. And we started talking and came to an idea that we wanted to pitch to, there was a competition called Boost Up that was being run out of the Western Canadian Children's Heart Network. And they were giving out grants for different projects that help support families and also medical advancements in the cardiac world for pediatrics. And so we thought we'd collab and pitch to them a project of my book, and she would help parents who have gone through this with their kids, help them to do a digital story about their experience. And so in the process of that, she did a digital story with me. So my very first experience of digital storytelling was working with Pedro Wolf and doing my first digital story. We did it out of my book. We did my chapter 1, which is called Day 1. It was the first day of just the experience and the feelings of finding out the diagnosis and when everything kind of shifts, right? And in the process of doing that day one story, it was, again, another layer of healing and diving deeper into that whole experience that was really unique. And so I fell in love with digital story as I did it, because I'm like, wow, there's something super therapeutic to the process of, I have to figure out words. So with the digital story, the way it works is you write a script of about 200 to 400 words and about an experience, primarily like a moment. So for me, day one was my moment that I was bringing out into my story. 200 to 400 words explaining that moment of kind of what was happening before, what happened, and the outcome of what happened. You record that story, then you go and you add photos to the story, you add music to that story, you add motion to the pictures and transitions to the pictures. So it's almost like a still video kind of idea, like where it moves from image to image as your story progresses. So I had to take my words. So I'd gone through the experience, I blogged about it, then I really wrote my words for how would I want to talk to a family who's going through this based on, having gone through it. Is there something that I can share that helps them navigate themselves? So writing from that outside perspective rather than that lived experience, blogging, you're in that moment. With writing in the book, I came outside of that moment looking back. And then digital story was like going higher up the mountain, looking at from an even different perspective. What did it feel like? What did it look like? What did I sense? Because you're trying to find pictures for weird words in your story that you wouldn't even think is a photo. And it's like, so what was the feeling? And so you're really like pulling apart your experience from all sorts of different perspectives as you're doing a digital storytelling. What kind of music like encapsulates what that felt like? Because, if you're on social media a lot, you'll see those like little videos where it's like music makes a big difference. And I remember seeing like the big dance scene from, what's that classic movie with Baby? I'll go without the reference. I can still say what I want to say without the reference. So in social media, there's a trend where, you take a classic dance scene. I've even seen it with Star Wars too, and you change the background music to it and it becomes something completely different, right? It totally changes the tone. So with digital storytelling, like picking the right music is a whole process as well. That's just quietly in the background, but you pick the wrong music and it changes the feel of your story completely. So when you're doing a digital story, it is a therapeutic process. There is so much you learn, you're walking through, that I enjoyed that process myself and went, wow, I actually want to do this. I'm a visual person. I love music. I love walking with people through things. I love listening to story. I love creating story. And it seemed like a really good fit. So I dreamed that one day I could do what Christy does and be a digital storyteller. And just over a year and a half ago, I went through my training course with Common Language Digital Storytellers and became a level 1 digital storyteller myself. So now I've helped other people write their stories, and it's been so, so neat to be able to see how people get excited about talking about sometimes really hard moments in their life, right? Where there's been deep challenge, and then seeing the growth from that and being able to look at that experience and write it out and put images to it and music to it, and just what that does and changes how they're approaching that memory as well has been really, really phenomenal to see. It's hard to explain, I think, the impact of creating a digital story until you've actually walked through it and done one.
It's almost like a virtual reality, like psychology moment. That's not the word I was looking for, but like a therapy.
Yeah.
Like therapeutical, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, somebody who might be interested in digital stories, are they available to find online, or like how does that work?
Yeah. I have my digital stories up on my own YouTube channel.
Okay.
I have a link tree that actually has I ended up through the Western Canadian Children's Heart Network getting a grant on my own that put my book into an audiobook that's now available free to families across Western Canada. And it also includes 3 digital stories that I created. That first one that I co-created with Christy, and then 2 that I did on my own after my training was done. That's available for parents. And in there's a link that gets you to link to my channel that has other digital stories now that I've done for other people as well.
Okay. Tell me about a time when another family reached out because Caregivers Corner. What was that like?
I had a really unique experience. I was at work and someone came in, and when they had found out who I was, they actually come from like Western Canada somewhere and had, I don't even know to this day, Pedro, how they got a hold of my book, but they had got a hold of my book. And when they did, they ended up having 2 children in the ICU at the same time, one as an older child and one as a baby. And in my book, my son has gone through more than one longer time in the ICU. So he's been in the ICU for 2 big chunks in his life, one when he was young and one when in his childhood as well. So in the process of that, we had different experiences. You navigate that differently when your kid's a different age. And this person had come across my book with kids in the same age brackets as the 2 different times of my son's life that we had navigated in the book. And he was in tears of gratitude of just how much of the lifeline that was for him as he was going back and forth between his children's rooms in the hospital at the same time and flopping in my book to different chapters of like those 2 different times of our story of how helpful it was for him to feel less alone. And I think like that's one of the biggest goals of the book, was for people to feel seen and not alone. No story is the same. No one's going to have the same story as we had. And I'm not going to assume that my story is going to fit everyone's story as well and be a help. But for some it is, or there's pieces of it that you're like, I see how that could help. And they take that and make that into their own tool in their story that works best for them. And that is the best feeling, to know that, like, no, I wouldn't want this to happen to anybody. But in the midst of that, if there's something good that can help somebody else out of something hard that we went through, it feels a little justified. I don't know if that's even the right word, but it makes me feel good to know that something good has come out of something really hard that felt really bad.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to no tears wasted.
Exactly.
Excellent. You won the WCCHN Boost Pitch competition. What was that experience like? And what did the funding let you do?
Yeah, that was a crazy experience. I had applied to their Boost Up competition multiple times, and I had not gotten it the first time or the second time and even the third time. And I ended up getting funding after I lost it the third time. I think my lesson I was learning in that was to not give up on things that are important. Like it was, I felt like there was a value in it. I was learning in the process of that how hard it is to advocate for caregivers. It's very easy to advocate for sick kids. That's an easy, I don't want to say sell, but and when you're looking for grant approval, it's kind of, you're trying to sell an idea or a resource. Everyone wants to help a sick kid. Parents don't want to take that for themselves. And as a parent, I feel the same way. It's like, no, like if there's money, like send it to my child to help them and resource, do research that kind of improves their chances and gives more options of what can be done for them in their future. But it's so important to support caregivers, as we mentioned earlier, with the whole idea of a marathon runner never drinks and runs in a hot day, they're going to collapse. And so it made me really want to strongly continue to advocate for caregivers to be like, make sure you have places to get a glass of water. Like keep paying attention to those moments and those times and opportunities to do so. So when I finally ended up winning the Boost Up competition and getting the grant money for my project to expand my book to make it free and accessible to all parents in Western Canada, that was a really great win for me to know that that was something that was now available for people to access.
What's the difference between being a parent who went through this and being someone who helps other families through it?
That's a great question. I actually, and this might seem weird, but I find it easier to be the person going through it myself than sometimes to know how to help families going through it. Through this journey, my husband and I have learned a lot about how we process and what's helpful and not helpful. And so every time there is something that comes up that is similar in struggle for us as a family, and there's been other things we've had to navigate as well, we kind of recognize what we need to do to make it through in our best plan forward. When you're working with other families, it's hard to know how do they process what is most helpful for them. Some families want extreme privacy. Some people want lots of input and help and encouragement, and trying to guess what is needed is sometimes challenging. I appreciate working with other families. Like, I find it is, it feels right to be able to, should we reword that? Let's edit that one out. One of the things I have found in connecting with other families going through similar situations is you cannot train empathy. You cannot teach empathy. You receive empathy from having walked through something and understanding. So when I come across other families who are going through their own stuff, it's not so much even about what you say or what you do, but simply knowing that you both have gone through something that's really hard is helpful. So when we stayed in Ronald McDonald House a few times, you're in a big space with families who are all going through it. Like, you're not staying there for no reason. It's because something's going on with your child. And we all know that you go there because there's something happening with your child. You can't just book a room at Ronald McDonald House for a vacation, right? Like, something's wrong. And there's a certain comfort and knowing that you're surrounded by people who get it, who get, if you're having a hard day, it's a hard day. So working with other families, there's a certain, I get it, because I've gone through something similar and I understand that this is hard and that you might not have words and you might be exhausted by questions. And so sometimes it's a hug, or it's just a comment, or it's giving them space to process, or bringing them a meal so they don't have to think about food or things like that. But yeah, it's challenging sometimes to help other families, because it also pulls your own story back into play, and to make sure I keep that separate and not bring in even my own story into other people's stories. But it's also good to know that it's like, I understand like a basic core level of where you're at from simply having walked through something similar, that I feel gives me an opportunity to sit and listen a little bit better than what could be if I can keep my own stuff behind.
Okay. But there's a level of vulnerability you have to be willing to go through to do that, right?
Yeah.
What's something about you that would surprise people who only know you through advocacy? Something that people might not know or guess.
I think one of the things that first comes to mind is the fact I'm actually quite silly.
Okay.
Because and in my advocacy work, I'm talking about such heavy topics all the time. I come off quite polished and serious. Like my responses are thought through because it's something I talk about quite a bit, that there's depth in their story. There's a certain sculpting that happens when you're speaking up on the same topic over and over again. But at home, I'm a bit of a wacky, bubbling mess at times, and our family is super silly, and we find really weird things funny, and that's just our little flavor. And I think that silly, unpolished side of me is something that if people only know me through my advocacy work would be like, really? And that is actually, a big piece of who I am too.
That's pretty cool. What do you do to recharge? And what brings you joy, like besides your work? Right.
This particular season, one of the biggest things that is actually bringing me joy is our little family. It's been, as we've walked through this, a whole bunch of different seasons of challenge and growth as a family, it's brought us closer together. And as my kids are in their teenage years now, realizing they're about to become adults and break into their own world and their own life and chart their own journey to new places. I'm actually, one of the places I recharge the most is just spending time with my crew and doing that. But I also love everything artistry. Like, I love music. I love pictures. I love good movies and good shows, and diving into a bit of the escapism of that is one of the things I enjoy, to kind of take a break and to, I guess, changing the perspective of having micro joys and the macro grief to going, well, there's less grief and I can enjoy more of those sorts of things, right? And dive into things like that. Yeah.
What's a recent movie or show that you have watched that you were like, this is good?
That's always a scary one to admit in public, I guess, right?
And you don't have to if you don't.
No. Actually, one that I just finished watching was called Younger, and the premise of like a 40-some-year-old having to pretend she's 26 in order to get a job. So it was a fun clash of what it's like to be older, and where the wisdom of being older and the spontaneity of being younger kind of collide. I'm a person, I've worked with kids for most of my life, and I like that it keeps me young at heart, and it keeps me silly, back to that silly comment as well. That I enjoyed the show just because it was that reminder of, as we age, we don't have to just become old and boring, that there's still life to be enjoyed and to engage in. So I found it funny because it was written well too. So
interesting. Might have to look into that one. I'm not familiar with it. So if you could go back to day one in a hospital and tell yourself something, what would it be?
To not fret about the length of the journey or where the journey is going to take me, but just to live in each moment. Because there's so much richness and beauty in each moment.
Where do you want to take Caregivers Corner? What's the dream?
I would like to see Caregivers Corner reach more spaces. Currently, the Western Canadian Children's Heart Network has it as a resource for families in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. It has been presented at a conference in Denver as well, just in September. I was there and presented a poster with my Caregivers Corner project, which had it reach many people in the States as a resource for parents as well. And I would like to see it be available to people across North America, for parents who are going through it, as just one potential tool to help them. Mm-hmm. Every parent is going to have different tools that they'll find useful. My husband wouldn't have found my book helpful to walk that journey. I'm pretty sure I actually read a book in a waiting room while my son was first diagnosed and in hospital. That was somebody else's story that I found really helpful to read. That probably was like a tiny little seed of thought for this project before I even realized it. I actually just thought about that this week. I'm like, I think I read someone else's book. And so recognizing that this book will be a tool for some and not for others. But my dream is to have it available so that people can find it if they need it.
But what keeps you showing up to do this work even on the hard days?
I feel it's important. It's important for parents to be seen in this process. It's important for parents to be aware of hope. Sometimes it's really, really hard. Any parent that is navigating a chronic health condition with their child understands that it's a journey. It's a different life that you're living inside of normal life. It feels like. That you're constantly in this different world than the people around you. And when it is a chronic health concern, it's not something that you ever exit. It's not like a trip that you go to and you come back. You have moved to a different location that is now your home base. And so it is important to feel connected and supported and to feel hope in the midst of that. And there's seasons where even I walk with a lot of hope and encouragement, and there's seasons where it's harder. And so it's important to continue this advocacy work because there's people who are in their space where they might feel hopeless right now. And being reminded that there is hope and there's others who journey as well is so very important.
So where can people find you, your digital stories and all of it? So I guess we talked about it before. We're going to link it in the bio, but just something to add to that if you want to, like, well, what you're up to these days and what people can look forward to.
I'm around. I'm still doing the stories. I'm I'm excited to dive more into working with people with digital stories, their own digital stories as well. I've been finding that work really, really rewarding. And I'm also here to talk to parents who might need to have someone who's walked a path of a chronic health diagnosis just to kind of listen. And so, I have the contact through my Linktree, and on there's a link that's a direct email as well to set up connection, and my resources can be seen there as well. So my Linktree is probably one of the currently best ways to get directly a hold of me to see what's going on.
Okay, excellent. Well, that is it. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It was great.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Such a lovely story, and I hope that it helped. I think I know people will be inspired by it. So that's the whole purpose of this podcast, right? Like inspiring people, just to different people go to different things, and like one person cannot help everybody. Like,
right.
So that's why it's so important for me to have different stories told, right?
Yeah.
And that somebody would relate to it, and that's the point. So thank you very much for watching. Also, something I would like to add, if you have somebody in mind that you think I should talk to or have on this podcast, feel free to contact me. You will find a link somewhere how to get a hold of me. Again, thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.